KLVTH stood at the observation window of the Viore command vessel and watched the human ship approach. It was ugly, where Viore ships curved like blades, designed to inspire fear and respect. The human carrier looked like a block of metal covered in weapons. No beauty, no elegance, just purpose. He did not want to be here. 3 weeks ago, the High Council had made a decision that shamed every warrior in the Dominion. They had asked the humans for help, the Viore, who had conquered 100 worlds, who had never bent their knee to any species, had admitted they could not win this war alone. The Kree collective was destroying them. Wave after wave of insected warriors, endless and hungry, had pushed through Viore space like fire through dry grass. 3 major fleets had been lost. 12 colony worlds had fallen silent. The Viore were running out of ships, running out of soldiers, running out of time. And so they had turned to the humans. Calvet's father had served 40 years in the fleet. His grandfather had died fighting the Saloran Empire. His family name was carved into the Hall of Heroes on the home world, and now his commanders had assigned him to babysit primitives. The door behind him opened, and High Marshal Seanthan entered. The old warrior's scales had faded to pale gray with age, but his eyes remained sharp. "You are sulking," Seanthan said. "I am reflecting, High Marshal." He replied, "You are sulking like a child denied a sweet. I can tell the difference." The old warrior moved to stand beside him at the window. "I know you believe this assignment is a punishment. It is not. It is a test." "Test of what?" "Of whether you can set aside your pride long enough to learn." Seanthan turned to face him. The humans defeated the Kree at Nexus Prime. Outnumbered 8-1, they held the line for 19 days. Do you know how many Viore fleets have held against such odds? Ka said nothing. None. Seanthan said, "Not one. The humans did something we could not." "I want to know what." An hour later, Caleb's shuttle docked with the human carrier. The ship was called the Relentless, a name he found appropriately brutal. A human officer met him at the airlock, a tall female with short dark hair and a face that looked like it had never smiled. "Commander Zara Holt," she said, "you must be our Viore liaison officer, Caleth of the 3rd Fleet." He performed the traditional greeting bow. She did not return it. "Follow me. I will take you to your quarters and then to Sergeant Ortiz. You will be attached to his squad for ground operations." Calves had to hurry to keep up, which he suspected was intentional. The interior of the human ship was even uglier than the exterior. Bare metal walls, harsh lighting, no art, no decoration, nothing to lift the spirit. The Viore believed that warriors fought better when surrounded by beauty. The humans apparently disagreed. They passed groups of human soldiers in the corridors. Caleb that studied them with growing confusion. Some were laughing, some were complaining loudly about the food. One was sleeping in a corner using his helmet as a pillow. They did not look like warriors preparing for battle. They looked like workers waiting for their shift to end. "Your soldiers seem relaxed," Calvet said carefully. Commander Holt glanced at him. "We ship out in 6 hours. They are resting while they can. Among my people, warriors spend the hours before battle in meditation and prayer. They sharpen their blades and recite the names of their ancestors. Do they sleep? Sleep is for afterward. A true warrior does not require rest before facing death." Commander Holt stopped walking. She turned to look at him, and Caliph saw something in her eyes that he did not understand. It was not anger, it was something older and heavier. Officer Caliph, she said quietly, when we reach Helix 4, we will be fighting for approximately 3 weeks. Continuous combat, no rotations, no relief, no safe zones. My soldiers will sleep whenever they can because they know that exhaustion kills as surely as enemy fire. Your rituals are very pretty. My soldiers are very practical. She started walking again. Sergeant Danny Ortiz was not what Caliph expected. The man was not tall. He was not physically impressive. He sat in the squad room, cleaning a weapon, and he barely looked up when Caliph entered. You are the alien? It was not a question. I am Officer Caliph. If I know who you are. Sit down. The squad room held 8 humans, each doing something different. A female with medical symbols on her armor was reading a book. A young male was writing on a piece of paper. Another was exercising in the corner. None of them paid any attention to Caliph. This is your squad? Caliph asked. What is left of it? Ortiz finished with his weapon and finally looked up. His eyes were like Commander Holt's, heavy, tired, old in a way that had nothing to do with years. We started the war with 20 combat, disease, and bad luck cut us down. These 8 are what survived. I am sorry for your losses. Do not be sorry, be useful. Ortiz stood. When we hit dirt, you stay behind me. You do what I say. When I say it, you do not engage in single combat. You do not offer challenges. You do not accept surrenders without my permission. Clear? Those restrictions violate the basic codes of honorable warfare. Good thing we are not fighting an honorable war. Kaith felt his scales flush with anger. The codes exist for a reason. They separate warriors from murderers. Ortiz walked toward him, stopping close enough that Caliph could smell the cleaning oil on his hands. When he spoke, his voice was soft. 2 years ago, the Kree hit a human colony called New Eden. 40,000 civilians, families, children. The Kree do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They do not follow codes. They ate those people alive and used their bones to mark territory. He paused. So we learned to be something else, something that could fight them and win. You can call it murder if you want. I call it survival. He walked away, returning to his seat. That night Caliph could not sleep. He kept thinking about Ortiz's words, about the weight in his eyes, about the soldiers who laughed and complained like the war was just a job. He walked through the ship and found an observation deck. Through the window he could see Helix 4, a green and blue world that had once been a Viore colony. Now it was a battlefield. He found the young soldier there, the one who had been writing earlier. The human was staring at the planet with a strange expression. It is beautiful, Ka said. The human nodded. My sister lived there before. I am sorry. The human turned to look at him. His name tag read Nunes. He was young, perhaps the youngest in the squad, and his face still held some softness. The sergeant told me about your warrior codes. Nunes said about honor and single combat and all that. Yes, it sounds nice. Nunes looked back at the planet. We used to believe in things like that, too, before we learned what the universe actually is. The dropship hit the ground hard and Caliph's teeth slammed together around him. The human soldiers were already moving, unbuckling harnesses and checking weapons with practice speed. No one spoke. No one Needed too. Sergeant Ortiz slapped the door release and gray light flooded the cabin. Outside, the ruins of a Viore city stretched in all directions. Buildings that had once touched the sky now lay in pieces. Streets that had held thousands of his people were empty and dead. Move, Ortiz said, and they moved. Caliph had trained for combat his entire life. He had studied tactics, mastered weapons, learned the ancient forms of blade and honor. None of it had prepared him for this. The humans did not march, they flowed. They used every piece of cover, every shadow, every broken wall. They communicated with hand signals and quiet clicks, never speaking. Louder than a whisper, they moved like water finding cracks in stone. Corporal Megan Price fell in beside him. She was the medic, a small female with tired eyes and gentle hands that KLVTH had seen reassemble a weapon in under 10 seconds. Stay low, she said. Stay quiet, stay alive. I know how to fight. Not like this. She pulled him down behind a collapsed wall as a Cree patrol passed 2 streets away. Your people fight in formations, clean lines, clear targets. The Cree do not care about formations, neither do we. The patrol passed and the squad moved again. They reached their objective an hour later, a communications tower that the Cree had captured and turned into a command post. Caliph expected Ortiz to call for a direct assault. The Viore way would be to announce their presence, challenge the enemy commander, and engage with honor. Instead, Ortiz spent 20 minutes studying the building through a scope. 4 guards on the ground level, 2 more on the roof, command staff inside. Maybe 6 or 7. He lowered the scope. None as Price, take the roof. Quiet, give me a click when it is done. And then we announce ourselves. Tailf asked. Ortiz looked at him like he had grown a second head. Then we go in through the windows and kill everyone inside without warning, without offering them a chance to surrender. The CF do not surrender. They pretend to surrender and then they release biological weapons or call for reinforcements or eat your face. We tried accepting surrenders early in the war. It cost us 3,000 soldiers. Ortiz turned back to watch the building. So, no warnings, no chances. We go in fast, we kill everything, and we complete the mission. Caliph felt sick. This was not warfare, this was slaughter too. Quiet clicks came through the radio. The roof guards were dead. Ortiz moved and the squad followed. They crossed the open ground in seconds, pressed against the building's wall, and then went through the windows in a coordinated burst of glass and violence. Caliph had never seen anything like it. The humans cleared the building in under 3 minutes. They moved through rooms like ghosts, shooting anything that moved, checking corners and shadows with mechanical precision. No mercy, no hesitation, no waste. One Cree warrior, larger than the others, stepped into Ortiz's path and raised its claws in the traditional challenge posture among Cavet's people. This would require a response. Honor against honor. Ortiz shot it in the head without breaking stride. That was a challenge, KLVTH said afterward when the building was secure and the squad was catching their breath. Yes, Ortiz said, you are supposed to accept, fight. Blade to blade, prove your worth. My worth is getting my people home alive. Ortiz reloaded his weapon. A challenge is just an enemy standing still long enough to get shot. That night they made camp in a basement while rain poured outside. The squad took turns on Watch while the others slept, Caliph could not rest. His mind kept replaying. The assault, the efficiency of it, the terrible speed. He found Megan Price sitting alone, cleaning blood from her medical kit, not human blood. She had performed emergency surgery on a wounded squad member during the assault, keeping him alive long enough to reach extraction. Now she worked in silence, her hands steady despite everything. How do you do it? KLVTH asked. Do what? Fight like this, kill without hesitation. And then he gestured at her medical kit. Save lives with those same hands. Price stopped cleaning. She looked at her hands for a long moment. My mother was a doctor, she said. She taught me that healing and hurting are not opposites, they are tools you use, whichever one the situation requires. She returned to cleaning. I hurt the enemy so my people do not die. I heal my people so they can keep fighting. It is not complicated. It seems complicated to me. That is because you are still thinking about honor. She met his eyes. Honor is a luxury. It is something you can afford when your survival is not at stake. When the CTH came for us, we could not afford it anymore. We became what we needed to become, and what is that effective? The next day brought worse. They found survivors in a collapsed shelter, Viore civilians, 15 of them trapped for days without food or water. The squad immediately began rescue operations, humans and Viore working together to shift rubble and create escape routes. Caliph watched Nunes carry a Viore child on his back through a narrow tunnel, singing softly to keep her calm. The same soldier who had killed 3 CF that morning without blinking, the same soldier who had joked about enemy body counts over breakfast. I do not understand you, Calvet said to him later. Nunes shrugged. What is to understand? We kill the enemy, we protect civilians, we go home if we can. That is the job. You killed enemies this morning like it was nothing. Now you carry children and sing songs. So how do you switch between them so easily? Nunes stopped walking. His young face went serious for the first time since Caliph had met him. Who said it was easy? He looked away. I cry sometimes at night when no one can see. I think about the things I have done and the things I have seen, and I cry like a baby. Then I wake up and do it again, because the alternative is letting the CF win. He started walking again. The sergeant says we are broken people doing necessary things. I think he is right. That night Caliph dreamed of his home world, of clean streets and beautiful architecture and warriors who fought with honor and codes. He woke up in a basement surrounded by humans who had thrown away everything he valued, and he began to wonder if maybe they had been right to do so. On the third day, a CRT ambush caught them in the open. Energy fire came from 3 directions at once. There was no cover, no time to think, no chance to form a proper defense. Ortiz threw himself on top of a wounded soldier and took 2 hits meant for her. His armor held barely. Nunes dragged them both behind a fallen wall, while Price provided covering fire with a weapon in each hand. They should have died by any reasonable calculation. They should have been overwhelmed and killed, but the humans did not fight reasonably. They fought dirty. They threw grenades into hiding spots. They collapsed a building on top of an enemy position. They used the bodies of fallen Kree as shields. When it was over, the squad had taken 3 wounded. The Kree had taken 47 dead. Ortiz sat against a wall, breathing hard. His armor was cracked and smoking. He looked at Caliph and almost smiled. Still think we should have accepted their challenge at the chaos and destruction and complete lack of honor. I am beginning to understand, he said slowly, why you win. The forward operating base was built from salvage materials and desperate hope. Human and Viore soldiers worked side by side, constructing walls and setting up defenses. 2 weeks into the campaign, the alliance had become something real. Kelveth barely recognized himself anymore. He ate human food without complaint. He slept in short bursts like they did, always ready to fight. He had stopped thinking about honor codes and started thinking about survival. The transformation frightened him, but he could not deny its effectiveness. You are becoming one of us, Nunez said one evening watching Caliph clean his weapon with human techniques. I am adapting. Same thing, Nunez grinned. The sergeant says you might actually be useful soon. High praise. A commotion at the base entrance drew their attention. Human scouts were returning, their faces pale and sick. One of them was vomiting. Behind a supply crate, another sat on the ground and stared at nothing. Commander Hall emerged from the command tent and spoke quietly with the lead scout. Her expression did not change, but something in her posture went rigid. All squad leaders to command, she announced. Now Caliph followed Ortiz into the tent. The air inside felt heavy with something terrible. Intelligence has located a Cree research facility 12 km north, Holt said. Our scouts found it 2 hours ago. She paused. They also found prisoners, Vori prisoners. Murmur ran through the assembled soldiers. Caliph felt hope rise in his chest. We will mount a rescue operation, he began. Let me finish. Holt's voice was sharp. The Cree have been using the prisoners for biological experiments. They are infecting them with parasitic organisms, transforming them into weapons. She looked directly at Caliph. I have informed Viore High Command. They have refused to authorize a rescue. They consider the prisoner contaminated beyond saving. The hope in Caliph's chest died. They are abandoning their own people. They are making a tactical decision. Holt's tone made clear what she thought of that decision. The official position is that the prisoners are already dead. No resources are to be spent on recovery. Ortiz spoke quietly. And what is our position, Commander? Hall looked at him for a long moment. Something passed between them, some understanding that Caliph could not read. Our position, she said finally, is that we do not leave people behind. Briefing in 1 hour. Dismissed. The assault team assembled as night fell. 20 human soldiers and Caliph moving through darkness toward a facility that should not exist. No Viore backup, no official authorization, just humans doing what humans did. The facility was built into a hillside, half buried and heavily guarded. The team split into groups and approached from multiple directions. Kath stayed with Ortiz's squad, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and something else, purpose. These humans were risking everything to save his people, and his own commanders had refused to help. They breached the outer defenses in silence. The humans had become shadows, ghosts that killed without sound or warning. KLVTH moved with them, no longer shocked by their methods. He had learned the interior of the facility was worse than anything he had imagined. Laboratories lined the corridors filled with equipment that Caliph did not recognize through observation windows. He saw things that broke something inside him, Viore bodies twisted into impossible shapes, limbs replaced with biological weapons, eyes that had been kind once now empty and wrong, and the sounds he would never forget. The sounds keep moving, Ortiz said, his voice flat and hard. We find the ones we can save and we get them out. They found the holding cells on the lowest level, rows of cages containing Viore prisoners in various stages of transformation. Some were still themselves, crying and begging for help. Others had gone too far, their bodies no longer their own. Megan Price moved through the cells, making rapid assessments. This one can be saved, this one too, this one. She stopped, her face went pale. This one needs mercy. Do it, Ortiz said. KLVTH watched as Nunes approached a Viore whose body had been twisted beyond recognition. The prisoner looked at him with eyes that still held awareness, still held pain. It tried to speak, but only wet sounds came out. Nunes knelt beside the cage. I am sorry, he said softly. I am so sorry. The shot was quick and clean. In another cage they found children, Valori young, taken from colonies and brought here for experiments. Some were still untouched, huddled together in terror. Others were not. Price lifted a dying child from the floor. The little one had been opened up and put back together wrong. There was no saving her. Everyone knew it. Price began to sing a human song, soft and gentle, the kind of song mothers sing to children. She held the child close and sang while Nunes prepared his weapon. Do not look, Ortiz told Caliph. You do not need to see this. They are my people, which is why you do not need to see this. Caliph looked anyway. He urged them that much. They rescued 11 prisoners that night, 11 out of nearly 200. The others were beyond help. Cressiers tried to flee. Commander Holt's orders regarding them were simple and absolute. Ortiz executed 13 of them personally. No trials, no questions. Just quick, efficient death delivered without anger or satisfaction. It was not punishment, it was prevention. Dead researchers could not hurt anyone else. On the way out, Caliph found himself walking beside Holt. The commander's face was blank, but her hands were shaking slightly. You violated orders to come here, he said. Yes, you will face consequences. Probably. She kept walking. There are things worth facing consequences for. The Cressiers, you killed them all. Yes. My people would have tried them, given them a chance to explain themselves. Justice has procedures. Holt stopped and turned to face him. Her eyes were fire and ice combined. Those things cut children open to see what was inside. They made mothers watch their babies transform into monsters. They kept records of screaming. Her voice remained perfectly level. I am not interested in justice. Justice is for situations where both sides are people. Those things stopped being people when they started. They're experiments. I am interested in making absolutely certain they can never do this again. She walked away. Back at base, the rescued prisoners were loaded onto medical transports. Human doctors worked alongside Viore healers, doing what they could. It was not enough. It would never be enough. Caliph found Ortiz sitting alone behind the supply depot. The sergeant was staring at his hands. He did not look up when Caliph approached. How do you endure this? Caliph asked. We do not endure it. Ortiz's voice was hollow. It breaks us. Every single time, it breaks us. He finally looked up. His eyes were wet. We just choose to be broken in a direction that still lets us protect people. That is all we have, the choice of how to break. Caleb sat down beside him. For a long time neither of them spoke. My people abandoned their own, Ka said. Finally, you risked everything to save them. That is the difference between us. Ortiz wiped his eyes roughly. Your people have honor, we have stubbornness. When someone tells us that good people are beyond saving, we do not accept it. We go anyway, we try anyway, even when it costs us everything. Why? Ortiz was quiet for a moment. Because someone has to, he said, and we would rather it be us than no one at all. 1 month had passed since the research facility. 1 month of constant fighting, constant death, constant horror. The combined human and Velari forces had pushed the Kree back to their primary hive world. Victory was close enough to taste. Caleb stood in the briefing room of the Viore command vessel, surrounded by officers he had known his entire life. They looked at him with something between respect and unease. Your reports have been valuable, High Marshal Sorrenthan said carefully. Your insights into human tactics have helped us coordinate effectively. Thank you, High Marshal. However, Soren paused. There have been concerns. Your behavior has changed. Your language, your methods. The old warriors' eyes were searching. Some officers believe you have become too close to the humans, that you have lost sight of what it means to be Velari. A younger officer spoke up. He refused to accept a formal challenge last week. A Kree commander offered single combat and Calveth simply shot him from distance. The commander was stalling for reinforcements. Caleb said flatly, I recognize the pattern from human intelligence reports. Accepting the challenge would have cost us 30 soldiers. That is not the point. The codes exist for reasons beyond tactics. The codes exist because our ancestors fought wars where survival was not at stake. Talth heard the steel in his own voice and did not soften it. This war is different. The Kree do not follow codes. They do not offer true challenges. They do not respect surrender. Fighting them with honor is not noble, it is suicide. Silence filled the room. Sorrenthan studied him for a long moment. You sound like a human, perhaps, or perhaps I sound like someone who has learned what war actually costs. Caleb met the old warrior in LT Unc and GT's eyes. The humans did not make me this way, the war did. Humans simply taught me how to survive. The briefing ended without resolution. KLVTH returned to the human section of the ship where Ortiz's squad was preparing for the final assault. They had been given 2 days of rest, but none of them seemed to know what to do with it. Nunez was writing letters again. He had a stack of them, now addressed to families of fallen squad members. He wrote one after every mission, recording what had happened and how their loved ones had died. Why do you do that? Caleb asked. Because someone should remember. Nunez sealed another envelope. Because these people mattered and their families deserve to know they mattered until the end. It must be painful writing the same kind of letter over and over. It is. Nunez smiled sadly, but pain is part of remembering. If it did not hurt, we might forget, and they deserve better than to be forgotten. The final assault began at dawn. Dropships fell toward the Krehive world like metal rain. Human and Viore soldiers descended together, united by a shared enemy and a shared purpose. Whatever differences remained between them no longer mattered. Victory mattered. Ending this war mattered. Caliph fought alongside Ordaz's squad, through tunnels that twisted like living things. The Krehive was not just a structure, it was a creature grown rather than built, and it fought back. With everything it had, they lost soldiers in the first hour, a cave-in, 2 humans, a Kree ambush killed a Viore lieutenant that Caliph had known since childhood. There was no time to mourn. There was only forward. In the deeper tunnels they encountered resistance. Unlike anything before, elite Kreth warriors bred specifically for combat defended their queen with mindless ferocity. The fighting became close and desperate. Caliph found himself back with Ortiz, firing into waves of enemies that seemed endless. None as went down. A Kreft blade caught him across the chest, punching through his armor. He fell hard and did not move. Megan Price was at his side in seconds, applying pressure and shouting for cover. He is alive, she reported, her hands red with his blood. Barely. I can stabilize him, but we need extraction. We are too deep, Ortiz said. Extraction cannot reach us here. Then I will carry him. A Viore soldier, KLVTH, did not know, stepped forward. I will take him to the surface. That is suicide. The tunnels are full of enemies. The Viore soldier shrugged. Humans saved 3 of my squad yesterday. He sang to a dying child so she would not be afraid. I owe him this. He lifted none as carefully and began the long climb to the surface. Caleb never learned if they made it. There was no time to wonder. The mission continued. They found the queen's chamber at the heart of the hive. She was enormous, a mountain of flesh and kittens surrounded by her personal guard. When the assault team broke through the final defenses, she raised her head and spoke in a voice that resonated through the chamber. You have fought well, warm bloods. I offer terms. Commander Holt stepped forward. We are listening. Spare my brood. Allow us to withdraw from all conquered worlds. We will return to the darkness between stars and trouble. You know more. The queen's multifaceted eyes gleamed. In exchange, this war ends. No more death, no more suffering. Peace. It was a reasonable offer. Objectively, strategically, it made sense. Millions of lives would be saved. The Valera could rebuild. The humans could go home. Holt was silent for a long moment. No, she said. The queen's body language shifted to confusion. You reject peace. Your soldiers are dying. Your resources are exhausted. Victory will cost you dearly. Yes. Hall raised her weapon. But your survival will cost our children more. Explain. You will withdraw. You will rebuild. And in 50 years or 100 or 1,000 you will return. Some other species will learn what we learned. Some other civilization will burn while you feed. Holt's voice was ice. I will not pass this burden to children not yet born. The cost of permanent victory is here. And now we will pay it. The queen made a sound that might have been laughter. You would sacrifice your own people for strangers who do not yet exist. Yes. That is madness. No hold fired. That is humanity. The battle for the queen's chamber was brutal and short. The elite guards fought to the last, but they were fighting soldiers who had already decided to pay any price. There was no desperation in the human assault, only cold determination. They had counted the cost and accepted it. When the queen fell, the hive began To die. Caliph stood in the ruins of the chamber covered in blood that was not his own. His armor was cracked, his body ocked with 100 small wounds. Around him, human and Vele soldiers sat or stood or lay where they had fallen. Ortiz approached slowly. He looked as tired as Caliph felt. It is over, Ortiz said. Yes, how do you feel, Calvth? Consider the question, he thought. About who he had been 1 month ago. Proud officer who believed in codes and honor, the warrior who thought war was a test of virtue. That person was dead. I do not know how to feel, he admitted. I do not know who I am anymore. Ortiz nodded slowly. That is normal. War takes who we were and burns it away. What is left is who we choose to become. He put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. You fought well. You protected people. That means something. I killed without mercy. I ignored every code I was raised to follow. Yes, Ortiz squeezed his shoulder. And because you did, people who would have died are still alive. That is the trade we make our souls for their survival. He let go and stepped back. Welcome to humanity. Around them, the hive continued to collapse. Soldiers began moving toward the exits, carrying their wounded and their dead. The war was ending. Something else was beginning. Caliph followed Ortiz toward the light. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Caliph stood at the window of his quarters on the Viore home world and watched ships move through the sky. Trade vessels mostly carrying goods between worlds that were rebuilding. The scars of war remained visible everywhere, but life was returning. Slowly, painfully, but returning. He had been given medals, promotions, a hero's welcome that made him want to scream. The politicians and generals spoke of glory and honor, using words that felt hollow and false. They had not been there. They had not seen what victory actually looked like. His communication device chimed. A message from Megan Price. She had left the military 6 months ago. The endless parade of wounded soldiers and shattered bodies had finally broken something in her. Now she worked in a refugee medical center on one of the colony worlds, treating civilians who had survived the Cree occupation. She wrote to KLVTH every week, short messages about small victories. A child who had learned to walk again. Family reunited after 3 years apart. The quiet work of healing. Today's message was simple. Nunez is doing well. He sends his regards. We miss you. Nunez had survived. The Viore soldier who had carried him to the surface had managed the impossible, fighting through a tunnel full of enemies with a wounded human on his back. Both of them had made it to extraction. Both of them had lived. Nunez had lost both legs below the knee. It did not slow him down. He taught combat medicine at a military training center, now insisting that new soldiers learn to save lives as well as take them. He had told Caliph that the teaching helped, that passing on what he knew made the things he had done feel purposeful. Caliph was not sure anything could make his experiences feel purposeful, but he was glad Nunez had found peace. His assistant entered with a message. Sir, you have been summoned to address the War Academy. Graduation ceremony requires a speaker. Caliph almost laughed. The War Academy wanted him to tell young warriors about glory and honor and the noble traditions of combat. They wanted stories of heroism that would inspire the next generation. He thought about refusing. He thought about all the comfortable lies he could tell instead of the truth. He thought about the young faces that would look up at him expecting validation of everything they believed. Tell them I accept, he said. The War Academy auditorium was filled with young Viori in their ceremonial best. They sat in perfect rows, scales gleaming, eyes bright with anticipation. Behind them, officers and dignitaries waited to hear inspiring words about warrior tradition. Caliph walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. It was full of proper phrases and noble sentiments. It was complete garbage. He set it aside. You expect me to tell you about honor? He began about the glory of combat and the sacred codes that separate warriors from murderers. That is what speakers at these ceremonies usually say. The audience shifted suddenly, uncertain. I am not going to tell you those things. Instead, I am going to tell you the truth about war and about the humans who taught me to survive it, he told them. About Sergeant Danny Ortiz, who killed without hesitation and cried alone at night. About Megan Price, who held dying children and sang them to sleep. About Leo Nunes, who joked about death and wrote letters to families so they would know their loved ones had mattered. He told them about the research facility, about the sounds he could never forget, about the mercy they had been forced to give because some wounds were beyond healing. He told them about Commander Zara Holt, who had defied orders to save people her own government had abandoned, about the choice she had made to end the CFT permanently, whatever the cost. The humans are not better warriors than us, tale that said they are not braver or stronger or more skilled. What makes them terrifying is that they understand something we have refused to accept. He paused. The auditorium was completely silent. War is not a test of honor. War is suffering industrialized. It doesn't care about codes or traditions or noble intentions. It takes everything you have and demands more. The humans do not glory in it. They hate it. They hate every moment of it, every death, every impossible choice, and that hatred makes them willing to do whatever is necessary to end it. He looked at the young faces before him. I watched humans risk their lives for very strangers. I watched them carry wounded soldiers who were not their own. I watched them sing to dying children and write letters to grieving families and mourn enemies they had killed. His voice softened. They did not fight because they enjoyed it. They fought because someone had to. They carry scars you cannot see, wounds that will never heal. And they would do it all again because that is what protecting people actually costs. The silence continued for a long moment. After he finished, then slowly someone began to clap. Others followed, not the enthusiastic applause he had heard at previous ceremonies, but something quieter and more thoughtful. He did not know if he had changed anything. Probably not. Young warriors would still dream of glory, and the truth would still be waiting to break them, but at least he had told it. 1 week later, Caliph traveled to Earth. The humans had built a memorial for their fallen soldiers, a wall of names stretching for kilometers, each one representing someone who had not come home. Caliph walked along it slowly, reading names he did not recognize, trying to comprehend the scale of sacrifice. He found Ortiz near the end, standing alone before a section of the wall. You came, Ortiz said without turning around. You invited me. I did not think you would actually come. Cavett stood beside him and looked at the names. There were so many, row after row of people who had given Everything so that others could live. How do you bear it? Kale Bate asked. Coming here seeing all of this, I do not bear it. Ortiz's voice was quiet. I just keep showing up. I owe them that much. He finally turned to look at Caliph. How are you? I am not who I was. None of us are. Ortiz turned back to the wall. The person I was before the war dies. Somewhere in those tunnels, what is left is someone else, someone shaped by choices I can never take back. Do you regret them, the choices? Ortiz was silent for a long time, sometimes late. At night when the dreams come, I wonder if there was another way, if I could have been better, kinder, more human. He shook his head slowly, but then I think about the people who lived because of what we did, the colonies that were rebuilt, the children who grew up safe. And I decide that the person I became was worth the cost. They stood together in silence. Around them other visitors moved through the memorial, humans and aliens alike, paying respects to the fallen. The war had touched everyone. Nuns asked about you, Ortiz said. Eventually, he wants you to visit training center, show the new soldiers what a proper ally looks like. I would like that. Good. Ortiz almost smiled. He also wants to teach you a human card game. He says you owe him money from a bet you apparently made. I remember no such bet. That is what makes nuns dangerous. He remembers everything. Ortiz's expression softened. Thank you for coming. It means something having someone here who understands. Thank you for teaching me. KLVTH looked at the wall of names again, for showing me what it truly means to protect something. That it costs more than glory, that it costs everything. Ortiz nodded slowly. Welcome to the species, he said. We are glad to have you. They stood together until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the memorial. Two soldiers from different worlds, bound by experiences that no one else could fully understand. They had been broken by war, transformed by it, shaped into something that had not existed before. But they had survived, and they had saved others, and in the end, perhaps that was enough. The shadows grew longer, the names on the wall seemed to glow in the fading light. Kael'Veth thought about the young warriors he had spoken to at the academy, about the horrors that awaited them if another war came, about the choices they would have to make. He hoped they never had to learn what he had learned. He hoped they never had to become what he had become, but if they did, he knew the humans would be there to show them the way. That was what humanity did. They stood beside you in the darkness. They carried you when you fell. They taught you how to break in a direction that still let you protect people, and then they stood with you at memorials, helping you carry the weight of what you had done. It was not honor. It was something better. It was brotherhood.